is not a memory. It's not a simple. It's not a mere memory, but it's a understanding that arises through wisdom. Okay. Then what is the second set? What is the second set that we should realize?
The 6 external bases.
Yes, the 6 external bases. So the 6 external bases are forms we see through the eyes. So rupa, okay, things we see from the eyes. And then the second one is sounds we hear from the ear. Then the third one is things that we smell from the nose. So that smell, the fragrance is external base. And then tastes, it's external base. And then sensations, they're external base. And thoughts, they're external base. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha teaches we have to realize the reality of these 6 external bases as well. Okay, so in order to realize the Dhamma, we need to understand the reality of these 6 external bases: forms, sounds, fragrance, tastes, sensations, and thoughts. The reality of it, and the reality of those is also they are also impermanent. They are also impermanent. We see external forms arise, stay for some time, and then vanish. Right? Even if you take an example of a building, okay, when the building is built, it rises and then it stays there for some time. And then after, maybe it could take a long time, but after some time, could be 200 years, 300 years, more than that, one day it's going to get destroyed. Right? So that is the nature of all external forms. Everything we see, all the sounds we hear, right? They're impermanent. Okay? So we have to realize that these external bases are also impermanent. So, and then what's the third set?
The 6 types of consciousness.
Yes, the 6 consciousness, which is we learned what consciousness is last time. That is how does the I consciousness arise? Then consciousness means vijnana in Pali. Well, how does I consciousness arise? Someone else tell me, someone who were here. Let's see whether you understood. How does the I consciousness arise?
When the eye sees the rupa, and then the rupa creates meets the consciousness, and
so in this sutta, the Supreme Buddha teaches what I consciousness is. The Supreme Buddha teaches when the I and the form gets together, that gives rise to I consciousness. Okay, so I consciousness is that bridge between the eyes and the external form. Okay, when the ear and the sound gets together, the Supreme Buddha teaches that gives rise to ear consciousness. The same with the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. So we discussed this in detail last time. Okay. So that is the third set of, this is the third set of, the third set from the set of 6. Then what is the fourth set? What is the fourth set? No, nobody knows?
Is the 6 types of contact.
Yes. Okay. The 6 types of contact, that means phassa, that's the Pali word, phassa. And that is, remember the teachers, you have to realize the reality of the 6 contact. And what is contact? When the eye, when the external form, And when eye consciousness gets together, it gives rise to eye contact. When the ear, when the external sound, and when the ear consciousness gets together, so it gives rise to ear contact. Okay. And when the nose, when the fragrance, and when the nose consciousness gets together, that gives rise to nose contact. Okay, it's called phassa. Passo in Pali, passo. Okay. So the Supreme Buddha teaches, understand the reality of contact. So now tell me, is contact a permanent thing? Or is it dependent on something?
It's dependent until the rupa or whatever is there.
Exactly. So contact is a dependent factor because contact arises with the merging of three things. So if those three things do not merge, contact does not arise. So it is a conditioned thing. This is what we need to understand and realize. So contact is not something that we create on our own. Okay, if the eye is there, if the external form is there, and if the eye consciousness arises, when those three things gets together, that gives rise to contact. We can't change, we can't stop it. It will definitely arise if those three gets together. Eye contact will definitely arise. Okay, so but that contact always changes when if the three things do not merge, then the contact does not arise. So it's a dependent factor. Therefore, it is not a permanent thing. Okay. So this is remember the teachers. We have to realize these these 6 types of contact as well. And then there's remember the teachers. Dependent on contact, there arises feelings. Okay, so therefore, this room that teaches, we have to realize the reality of feelings as well. Okay, now the moment we start to talk, the moment we talk about feelings, we get that, oh, I am feeling, you're feeling, right? So with that word feeling, that the sense of me is very much attached. However, the Supreme Buddha teaches, feelings arise due to what? To contact. Passa paccaya vedana. Passa paccaya vedana. Dependent on contact, there arises feelings. Okay? So if contact is there, feelings definitely arises. You can't stop it. It's a conditioned process. Understand? So then, if feelings are dependent on contact, then are feelings permanent? If feelings are dependent on contact, okay, and if contact is dependent on the merging of 3 factors, are these things permanent things? No. Exactly. Okay, so this is what we need to realize. However, now the ordinary mind takes these feelings as me, mine, and myself. And when when we are in pain, we feel like pain is going to be there forever. Right? We don't, but if a person realizes this, okay, when you're feeling a painful feeling, or when you're suffering, when you're sorrowful, if a person, investigate, okay, this sorrowful feeling arose due to contact. When contact changes, this feeling changes. So that is thinking the Dhamma, that is analyzing the Dhamma. So therefore, that person knows these feelings are not going to be there forever. Understand? Could you give me 2 minutes, please? Sorry. Okay. So that's what we need to realize, that feelings are impermanent. Okay. So that is the fifth set of 6. Okay. And what is the sixth set of 6? The last one is, the Supreme Buddha teaches, dependent on when the form, when the I consciousness gets together, that gives rise to contact. And due to contact, there arises feelings. And from feelings, there arises craving. Okay? With feeling as condition, there is craving. Okay? So, this is remember the teachers, when we feel when we have a pleasant feeling, then we crave it. So if a form gives us a pleasant feeling, we crave it. Okay, craving is that when we see, for example, if there's craving through the ears to the eyes, that means when we see something, our eyes get drawn to it. Our eyes get drawn to it. That is craving. Okay, why do our eyes get drawn to things that gives us an unpleasant feeling? No, we quickly look away. But when something gives us lots of gratification, that is pleasant feeling, then we become drawn to it. We want to see it again and again. When we listen to something, or when we hear something that gives us gratification, that gives us a pleasant feeling, then our ears become drawn to that sound. And that's why, people hear the same thing again and again and again and again, because they crave it, right? And when you eat something, okay, when what you eat gives you a pleasant feeling, then you want to eat it again, right? So what is that? Craving. So we are leaving. So you can understand the reality of craving. How does craving arise? What is craving? Because we have heard this word craving, but what is the root of it? How does it arise? Now through this teaching, you can understand what craving is. At least we have to first understand what is within us before we before we abandon it, right? So that's what craving is. So how does craving arise? From contact. Okay. So craving arise from feelings. So when there's a pleasant feeling, then we crave it. Okay. So that's what we learned last time. So it took us like 1 hour to learn up to this point in detail. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and go to the next part. And in this part, the Supreme Buddha teaches, so if all of these things are impermanent, if the eyes, if the external forms, if the eye consciousness, eye contact, feelings and craving, if all of these things are impermanent, then if somebody says that this I is self means atta means self means it's something that we can keep under our control, that we are in control of it. So if somebody says that this I is self, okay, now that's the natural feeling that we get. For an ordinary person who's going in this samsara, we feel that this I self, I can control this the way I want. That is the natural feeling that we get. But when we investigate, we realize that this I is always this. We can see this I being born. We can see this I aging and changing and continuing, and then we can see this I dying. Okay, so if something if something arises and vanishes, okay, can we keep it under our control? Can we? We can't, right? So if somebody says that this I is self, is it a correct saying? Is it a correct saying? No, it's not a correct saying. So the Supreme Buddha teaches, if anyone says that the I is self, then that is not an appropriate thing to say. Why? Because we can clearly see the I arising and vanishing. Okay? Therefore, you should realize that this I is not self. It's not self. There is no self in it. It arises and it vanishes. Understand? Okay. The external forms, if somebody says that these external forms are self, that means that there's a that we can keep it under our control. That there's a possibility to keep it under our control. Okay. If somebody says that, it is not an appropriate thing to say. That is not a correct thing to say. The reason being, we see these external forms arising and vanishing. For example, external form, an example of external form, we can take as a person. So a mother, a father, right? So that person was born. That is the arising. And that person ages. And then that person dies. That is the vanishing. So can we say that that external form can be controlled, can be under our control? We can't, right? So all of these external forms, they arise and they vanish. So the Supreme Buddha teaches, so if a person says there's a self in it, that we can control it, the Supreme Buddha says that is not a correct thing to say. Why? Because we can see it arising and vanishing. So if we call something that arises and vanishing self, then that is not appropriate. It is not a correct thing to say. Okay? So now through this you can understand what delusion is. Right? Now delusion means not understanding reality. Right? So the normal person always thinks these internal faculties are mine. That is the sense that we have, that we can that we can control these things the way we want. And we think we can control these external things that the way we want. That is the natural sense that we get as ordinary people who are going in this samsara. So it's through investigating like this, through analyzing the reality, that a person realizes that there is no me in here. There's no mind, there's no I, there's no me, there's no mind that I can control the way I want. It's called anatta. That is what's called anatta. Okay. So in the same way, the Supreme Buddha teaches, if anyone says that I consciousness is self, okay? If someone says that I consciousness is self, that means I consciousness is something that we can control the way we want. The Supreme Buddha teaches that is not a proper thing to say. Why? Because I consciousness arises due to a cause, and when that cause changes, it vanishes. Right? So when the I and the form gets together, that gives rise to I consciousness. Okay, and the moment you close your eyes, then that bridge between that form and the I is not there anymore. Okay, and you can't see it. Right? So I consciousness also arises dependent on a cause, and when it changes, thy consciousness changes. So therefore, it is an impermanent thing. So if we call something that arises and vanishes a self, That is not the appropriate thing to say. Therefore, the Supreme Buddha teaches we understand that I consciousness is also not self. Now you see, so one by one, the Supreme Buddha is teaching. Then the Supreme Buddha teaches, if somebody says that eye contact is self, okay? If somebody says eye contact is self, that is not the correct thing to say. Why? Because eye contact arises and vanishes. How does it arise? When those three factors merge. When the eye, when the external form, and when the eye consciousness arise, eye contact arises. Okay? Then, when that eye contact changes, if one of those three factors are not there, then eye contact changes. Right? So it arises due to those three, and if at least one of those three are not there, okay, eye contact changes. It vanishes. Okay, so therefore, as a Buddha teaches, it's not a proper thing to say that eye contact is what is self. Then, as a Buddha teaches, feelings. If somebody says that feelings are what is self, feelings are self, then as a Buddha teaches, it's not a proper thing to say. Why? Because feelings, it's very clear for someone who wisely investigate that feelings arise from a cause. And what is the cause? How do feelings arise? Based on contact, right? Phassa paccaya vedana. So feeling is only there as long as that certain contact is there. Once that changes, the feeling changes. So if somebody says that feeling is a self, that it's something that can be controlled by you, it's not true. Like for example, somebody comes and starts to blame you. Okay, so now somebody is blaming you. So your ear, with that external sound of blame, and your ear consciousness gets together. Okay, that gives rise to contact. And through that contact, now since blame is something that's unpleasant to us, right? We feel an unpleasant feeling. Okay? From that contact, there's an unpleasant feeling. Okay, and then that person stops blaming us. Okay, so now we are upset, we are about to cry, we are angry, we are just so very upset. Okay, and then that person suddenly stops blaming and starts to praise you. Now what happens? Now that contact changes. So that sound is changing, right? Because that sound is changing, so now it's a different sound. Now he's speaking so gently, nicely, and praising you. So the ear, that external sound of praise, and the eye consciousness gets together, and that gives rise to contact. And through that contact, that now you're happy, right? So those feelings arose due to contact, and when contact changes, feelings changes. Do you understand? So then therefore the Supreme Buddha teaches these feelings, they are not the self. There's no self in it. It is a dependent factor. Okay? When contact changes, feelings change. But the ordinary person grasps these feelings as how? Me, I'm feeling, I am down, I'm upset. Right? Oh, I'm happy. Oh, I'm so joyful. So the ordinary person grasps these feelings as me, mine, and myself. As if we are in control of these feelings. Okay. Then the Supreme Buddha teaches, craving that arises through the I. That if somebody says that craving is self, that we can keep it under our control, that we are in control of that craving, that's why the teachers, that is not an appropriate thing to say. Why? Because craving arises due to feelings. Okay, so that when that feelings change, that craving changes. It's not something that we can keep under our control. Now, for an example, sometimes when people are very young, they crave certain food. Okay, but when they get old, that craving is not there. Why? Because that same food doesn't give that pleasant feeling to them anymore. Or sometimes there are people, some people crave certain foods and they eat lots of it for a long time, and after some time that food doesn't give them that pleasant feeling anymore, and sometimes they become very repulsive to that same food. So craving is not a permanent, it's not a self. It's not something that we can control, that's under our control. It's a dependent factor. That's what the Surya teaches. So if a person says it's self, that's not a right thing to say, because craving is not self, it's anatta. Okay. However, the ordinary person, takes all of these things as me, mine, and I. The eyes, what we see, eye consciousness, because the ordinary person doesn't even know what is happening here. So he grasps all of these things as me, mine, and I. I'm seeing, I'm hearing, and have the sense that all of these things can be controlled. Okay? But here the Srimad clearly teaches that all of these things, they are impermanent things that arise from a cause and vanish when that cause vanishes. Okay, so now what I described is only the 6 sets of I only described to the eyes. So the same things from the ears, from the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. If I go on and say all of these things, it's going to take a long time. So that's why I just explained the non-self through the eyes, and that is the same thing for the ears. Okay, so if a person thinks that the ears are self, or the sounds are self, okay, or the ear consciousness is self, or your contact, or your feelings, or your or craving is feeling, or craving is self, the Supreme that is not a proper thing to say. Why? Because all of those things, they are dependent factors. They're impermanent. Okay, so now once the sutta ends, now you can one by one go through, okay, these 6 faculties and investigate and analyze how these things are non-self. Okay, when you do like that, only you become very familiar with these words, with these processes, and realize and understand how these things are impermanent and non-self. Okay, so in this way, the Supreme Buddha teaches these 6 sets of 6, they are not self. There is no self there. It's anatta. Okay. And the Supreme Buddha teaches in the next section, the Supreme Buddha teaches it's because that people regard this I as me, mine, and myself. That's what leads to the origination of identity. Identity means, for example, you have heard of the word Sakkaya Ditti. Sakkaya Ditti means, having the view that the 5 aggregates of clinging is me, mine, and I. There's a permanent that they're permanent and that you can control it the way you want. Okay? So just remember that it's because people think like this, that the eyes are mine, the ears are mine, the nose are mine, the tongue, the body, the mind is mine. It's mine, it's I, it's myself. It's because people think like this that this 5 aggregates of clinging or panch upadana khanda arises. Okay? So if a person wants to, a panch upadana khanda means rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana. It's because now that's a little bit deep, so I'm not going to go on to explain it. Just for now, know that 5 aggregates of clinging, that is thinking that rupa means forms. Okay, vedana is feelings, sanya is perceptions, sankara means volitional formation. That is, volitional formation means intentional thoughts, and vijnana, consciousness. So you know some of it. So thinking, those things are me, mine, and myself. So okay, so as long as a person thinks like that, that person clings to these 5 aggregates of clinging, and that is the reason they go on in this samsara. That is the origination of samsara. So for a person, if a person wants to be free from this samsara, then he has to understand the reality and realize that this is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. So thinking that pattern or realizing that is what will help a person to be free from clinging to these 5 aggregates of clinging. So that is why in impermanence meditations we practice thinking and analyzing. This I is impermanent. It is not me. It is not mine. It is not myself. These ears are impermanent. It is not me. It is not mine. It is not myself. So we first, by saying it or thinking, we practice it. Okay, then only from there on we can little by little analyze and realize it on our own. Okay, because the ordinary mind quickly grasps all of these 6. The ordinary mind grasps these 6 sets as me, mine, and myself. Okay, both me and you. That is the nature. Okay. So for us to reverse this, do you think it is an easy process? Reverse this thinking pattern. To reverse this, you have to realize impermanence. Understand impermanence. That is the way that a person can be free from this samsara. So to understand, realize impermanence, we first have to at least learn it and at least practice thinking it. Then one day we will realize it. Okay. So the Supreme Buddha teaches, if a person regards this I as this is not mine, this is not me, this is not myself, then that is what leads to the cessation or being free from the 5 aggregates of clinging. Okay? So you have to understand the reality and regard these 6 sets of 6 as not being a self, not having a self. That is the way to escape from this samsara. Okay. So to get there, we first have to listen to these teachings again and again and again and again and again. Then only it will go into our heads. Okay, because what has gone into our heads thus far is this I is me. These ears are me, mine, myself. Okay, the nose, the tongue, the body, it's me, it's mine, right? We grasp, we cling to this body. these internal faculties. Why? Because we grasp, we cling to it, thinking it's me, mine, and myself. But now tell me now, from what you learned, is there anything to cling here? From what you learned? No, right? So one day you will realize this. And that realization is what will lead to liberation. Okay, so this is the start. Okay. Then the Supreme Buddha teaches a very very important factor of Dhamma, and that is the Supreme Buddha teaches how we continue to develop defilements inside. Okay, so now we have come thus far in this samsara because we weren't able to purify this mind. We weren't able to understand reality and purify the mind. So remember the teachers here, how that happens. Here, remember the teachers, dependent on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. Now you all know this, right? Dependent on the I and the forms, I consciousness arises. You understand that, right? The meeting of the three is contact. We also learn this meeting of the three, the I, the form, and the I consciousness, that is contact. With contact as condition, there arises what? Good, feelings. With contact as condition, there arises feeling. Okay. And these feelings are felt in three ways, either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Right? Do you agree? Yes. Then the Supreme Buddha teaches, when one is touched by a pleasant feeling, that means when that means when you see someone you like or something that you like, okay, when one is touched by a pleasant feeling, what that person does is he delights in it. When you see some now, for example, say somebody whom you love the most is in front of you. Okay, so that gives rise to a what? Unpleasant feeling or a pleasant feeling?
Pleasant feeling.
Pleasant feeling. Okay, and the moment you see him through contact, there arises feeling, and this remember the teachers, dependent on that pleasant feeling, abhinandati. Abhinandati means he delights in seeing that person. Abhinandati, delights. Then abhivadati, and then praises that person. Oh, you came after a long time. How are you? You look so good. Praises. Okay, and another very easy to understand example is through the tongue. You eat something that's very delicious. Okay, so it's a pleasant feeling. And so through the pleasant feeling, what's the next thing that happens? You delight, abhinandati, you delight in it. So when that taste goes through your taste buds, you feel that great taste and you delight in it. And then what's the next thing you say? Abhivadati. Abhivadati means you praise it. Oh, delicious. Why don't you try it? Right, this is what we do. You praise it. Abhinandati, abhivadati. And when that happens, remember the teachers, ajosaya tittati. You become absorbed to it. Through craving, you become absorbed to it. This is how we came thus far in the samsara. Okay. And remember the teachers, when that happens, now tell me, isn't this what happens pretty much most of the time, right? This is what happens. Remember, when this happens, then the underlying tendency to lust lies within. That's called, in Pali, we use the word raga anusaya. Raga means lust. Anusaya means lust that is deposited within, very deep within. So every time we delight in things that we see, lust is deposited in. So lust grows within. And it's like a lust is deep, deposited within. Okay. Then the Supreme Buddha teaches, so that's what happens when we see something that we like, that it gives us a pleasant feeling. One of you have asked, external basis can be imaginary also. So if it's imaginary, yes, it's a thought. Yeah, it's a thought is external base, yes. Okay, so when we delight in something, what grows inside is lust. Okay, lust grows in it. Sorry, lust is deposited in it. So within us, lust is deposited. Okay. And then the Sarimati teaches, now, if we see something that we don't like, that gives rise to a painful feeling. Okay, so that's when we see somebody that we don't like, it gives us a resentful, painful feeling. And if one sorrows, grieves, and laments, weeps, beating one's breast, and becomes distraught, so that means when we see something that we don't like, okay, that upsets us, right? That upsets us, that upsetness it's resentment. Okay. So remember the teachers, when we see something that we don't like, that gives rise to an unpleasant feeling, painful feeling, and we lament, we become upset, and we beating one's breast. Okay, so that means we're grieving, we're not happy. Then what happens is the underlying tendency to aversion lies within. That is called that hatred or resentfulness lies within. Okay? So when we delight in something, what happens is lust is deposited within. When we react negatively, resentfully to something, or when we become upset, what happens is aversion, the underlying tendency to aversion. It's called a patiganusa. In Pali, we use the word patiganusa, that is deposited within. Okay. Then when one is touched by when one is touched by a neutral feeling, so that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. If that person does not understand how it arises and how it vanishes, so that means if a person doesn't understand that neutral feeling arose from contact, and when contact changes, that feeling changes. If that person doesn't know the reality of it, then that person is in delusion, and therefore the underlying tendency to ignorance lies within. Right? So what are these three things? Lust, in general, what it is: lust, hatred, and delusion. So these three things are what lies within again and again and again. Okay, so as long as a person has these things within, as long as a person has these three things within, if that's what we cultivate and develop and grow, then that person cannot be free from this samsara. In the same way the teaches, without abandoning these underlying tendencies, a person cannot become free from this samsara. Without understanding the reality and giving rise to true knowledge, a person cannot escape from this samsara. It is impossible. Okay? The same way that is, however, when the forms and when the I consciousness arises, okay, there arises contact, and through contact, there arises feelings. And when there's a pleasant feeling, okay, when there's a pleasant feeling, so something that that is pleasant is in front of you, if one does not delight in it, if he does not praise it, and if he does not become absorbed by it, remain holding on to it, so remember the teachers, then the underlying tendency to lust, that is raga anusaya, does not lie within. Okay, so when we see something, if we do not delight in it, if we do not praise it, if we do not become absorbed by it, then though that underlying tendency to lust does not lie within. Understand? So how can a person not delight in something when it's in front of you? When somebody whom you love is in front of you, or when you're eating a very delicious food, how can you not delight in it? By understanding reality, by understanding that it's impermanent. When you're eating something delicious, that taste is something we can't stop. Why? Because if contact is there, if you put a very delicious food on your tongue, you're going to definitely feel a very tasty taste. We can't stop it. Okay. However, if you have realized that this taste is impermanent, it's also always changing, then the Supreme teaches, when you see the impermanence, then that person does not delight in it. He does not become extremely happy about it. But he knows it's impermanent. Understand? So it's that understanding of impermanence of these 6 sets of 6 that helps a person to escape from this samsara. Okay? The Supreme teaches, when one is touched by a painful feeling, okay, so an unpleasant external form or an external sound is there, but if that person does not sorrow, grieve, and lament, and become distraught and upset, then the underlying tendency to aversion does not lie within one. Okay, so when somebody is blaming you, so there is an unpleasant sound. Usually what happens is when somebody is blaming us, we become extremely upset. So the moment we become upset, what happens is that underlying tendency to aversion, that resentfulness is deposited within us. That's what grows with it. Okay? However, if a person understands this process of impermanence through these 6 sets of 6, then he knows when blame is impermanent. He knows it arises and it vanishes. Okay, therefore he doesn't become upset. Of course, to get to this level, you need lots of wisdom to be able to understand this as impermanent when somebody's blaming you. You need mindfulness, you need effort, you need wisdom, you need those fundamental qualities that you need to develop in this Dhamma path. And in the same way, when a person is touched by a neutral feeling, if the person realizes that how this neutral feeling arises and how it vanishes, when contact is there, it arises. When contact changes, that vanishes. So if a person understands the reality of that feeling, then the Supreme Buddha teaches, then the underlying tendency to ignorance does not lie within. Okay? Because such a person is the one who will make an end of suffering by abandoning the underlying tendency to lust, by abandoning the underlying tendency to aversion, by abandoning the underlying tendency to ignorance. Okay, in this way, the Supreme Buddha teaches for each of the 6 sets of 6, the Supreme Buddha teaches in this way. Okay, and then the Supreme Buddha teaches, seeing thus bhikkhus, a well-taught noble disciples, when a noble disciple sees this reality. So from the beginning, we started with the understanding the impermanence of the 6 sets of 6, and then the Supreme Buddha taught how these 6 sets of 6 are not self, right? And then the Supreme Buddha taught how if a person realizes that these 6 sets of 6 are not self, then that person does not cling to the 5 aggregates of clinging. And then the Supreme Buddha taught, if a person understands that these 6 sets of 6 are impermanent, then the underlying tendency to lust, aversion, and ignorance does not grow within him, and therefore that is the person who escapes from suffering. So Supreme Buddha is, if a noble disciple understand this, he becomes nibbindati. That is the word that's used in Pali. Nibbindati means he becomes disenchanted through understanding. That is, he becomes passion-free through understanding. Okay, nibbindati. He becomes disenchanted through realization. Okay, he becomes disenchanted with the eye, forms, eye consciousness, eye contact, eye feelings, feelings that arises through the eye, and craving. Okay, and the same thing for the 6 sense bases. Okay, being disenchanted, he becomes dispassionate. Okay, nibbindam virajyati. Once you become disenchanted with something, once you realize, but now what is this disenchantment? When a person realizes something, okay, let me give you an example. Okay, suppose someone gives you, that this is the example that Pinwat Loksaminasa gives. Okay, suppose someone gives you a necklace. Okay, and she says, this is a gold necklace. This is a gold necklace. These are diamonds. Okay, so the moment when you get it, how do you feel? You become, wow, you're delighted with it, right? Wow, it's so precious, it's so valuable, and you protect it so much. Okay. And then one day you take it to a jeweler and you tell him, this is a pure gold necklace with diamonds. Okay. I want to change these things. And so the jeweler looks at the necklace and he says, no, this is not gold. This is an imitation. These are not diamonds. These are just stones. So the jeweler knows the truth, no? So he says, this is imitation. Now what happens? What happens to that delightfulness that you had with the necklace? It goes away. Why? Because you understood the reality of it. That is what disenchantment is. When you understand the reality of something, when you understand the reality of the eyes, you become disenchanted with it. with that disenchantment. So that is something that comes with realization. When you become disenchanted, you become passion free. You don't cling to it anymore. You become dispassionate. Nibbindam virajjati, viraga vimucchati. When you become dispassionate, your mind becomes liberated. When you become liberated means you have completely eradicated all lust, all hatred, all delusion, and you have attained a pure mind. Okay, no clinging, no craving, no ignorance. Once you become liberated, you understand. Okay, China Jati, you realize birth is destroyed. Okay, Usitam Brahmacharyam, my holy life has been completed. Katan Karaniyam, what needs to be done, I have done. There is nothing more to be done. So a person who is liberated, gets this knowledge that he's free from this samsara. So nobody comes and tells him, now you're free. He understands it through his own self. Okay, that is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. And while the discourse was being taught, through not clinging, 60 bhikkhus were liberated from all taints. So when this sutta was taught by our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, at that very moment, 60 bhikkhus became liberated, became arahants, became free from this samsara. Okay, so may this beautiful sutta help all of us to realize the reality and become disenchanted, become dispassionate, and become liberated and escape from this samsara in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.